Current generation AMD and Nvidia graphics cards were sold at near record-breaking quantities, and the crypto situation that was responsible for a significant part of that is now over, right?
Well, not quite. And that might be a good thing.
You see, with over 85 million GPUs shipped since the launch of the RTX 3080 and reports of miners selling off their inventory making used market prices plummet, imagine my surprise when I checked the Steam hardware survey and saw that the first discrete desktop GPU of the current generation is in 8th place.
So let's talk about what that means, including why a laptop outranks everything, and stay tuned to the end because we're also going to speculate about the future of RTX 3000 and RX 6000, because you may be handsomely rewarded for your struggles during the GPU crisis. Let me explain. Before we continue, if you're like me, then I think you're really going to like today's video sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an amazing online resource with thousands of inspiring classes and members across 150 countries. It's a place to develop a passion you've been wanting to try or get inspired to be better at what you do best. The first one that I checked out was naturally YouTube Success, Script Shoot and Edit with MKBHD to help me make better content for you guys. And maybe you'll find it as useful as I am. But with classes from music production, web development, film and video, even business analytics, Skillshare can help you make 2022 a year of new learning and growth. So if self-development is something you've been wanting to focus on, the first 1,000 people to follow the links in the video description are even going to be fortunate enough to get a free month to try it out, which can be used to jumpstart your next chapter and get on your path to success, however you define it. So in our journey to find out where all the current generation GPUs have gone, we need to start with how many have actually been sold, comparatively.
This graph, using data from John Petty Research, shows discrete desktop graphics card shipments all the way back to 2014, combining both AMD and Nvidia GPUs. Though it's worth mentioning that typically it's around an 80-20 split in the favor for Nvidia. So what we can do is overlay the release timeline for each generation, which, as you would expect, tells a story.
You know how everyone said RTX 2000 generation was a pretty bad buy and GTX 10 series was great?
Well, the data does seem to reflect this in terms of buyer behavior, showing over 40 million more cards shipped during the GTX 10 days, and reflected in the Steam hardware survey at places 1, 3, 6, and 10. But what about RTX 3000 and RX 6000? Well, after adding on the Q1 22 data, the current generation has outsold the previous at over 80 million units shipped.
You then couple that with the fact that there are a lot less card models this time around
compared to Nvidia 16 and 20 and AMD 5000 and 500 during this time period. So with more units sold in the current generation and less models dividing the total, with all other aspects being equal, logic dictates that we should see more current generation cards higher up the list compared to previous generation, right?
Well, that isn't the case.
4 of the top 10 are previous generation cards, and only a single discrete desktop card from the current generation has made it on the top 10 list.
So let's talk about the elephant in the room and why an entire laptop is more popular than any current generation GPU. The thing that you do have to remember about the Steam hardware survey is that
this data is quite a narrow view. What it's showing us is graphics cards in use by people who have opted into the survey through Steam.
And by that definition, it's really not much of a stretch
to basically call every user accounted for on this list a gamer. So with that in mind, it should be pretty obvious by now why more current generation GPUs have been sold, but less of them accounted for in the Steam hardware survey.
Yes, of course, we are talking miners, but that might be a good thing.
You see, miners have no need to install Steam on their mining rigs, so likely an insignificant number of GPUs bought by miners are accounted for here, and the rest of them, likely including the mass amount sold directly to large-scale mining operations, absent in this data. And to me, the fact that it is absent means that we are still waiting for miners to mass sell their cards into the market. The evidence of this is if the same portion of current generation GPUs found their way into the hands of gamers compared to previous generation, we would expect to see many more current generation GPUs rank much higher, given the data shows more have been sold up to only March 2022, and it's still counting.
And I think the thing that reinforces that so perfectly for me
is the fact the best-selling current generation GPU sold to people who installed Steam is an entire laptop. Let me just let that sink in. More gamers ended up getting a laptop than buying any other current generation GPU.
That's how bad it got and still is today. So what does that mean for the future of RTX 3000 and RX 6000? Well, it's going to be a great time to be a gamer. Based on the data, to me, that's where all of the GPUs have gone, and we're still waiting for the
overwhelming amount of GPUs held by miners to make their way into the hands of gamers. For small-scale, single-man mining operations, this can happen quite quickly. Take it off the rig, clean it, sell it, and the card is bought by a savvy shopper willing to take a risk. But for larger scale mining operations responsible for the majority of the mining stock, this is a logistical nightmare, and likely will be sold in bulk to resellers and middlemen until finally making their way onto places like eBay, as smaller bulk or single listings. So I'm going to make a dedicated video about eBay prices, similar to what you saw in the GPU crisis updates, but I imagine that price declines have only just started, and the rock bottom low will come soon after the release of the next generation for two reasons. Number one, the time it takes to get these GPUs into the market and in the hands of gamers, and secondly, people still holding out optimistically for crypto to bounce back, which again, I think we'll find out soon after the release of the next generation. Because if it does bounce back, well, we're all f***ed again, aren't we? So thank you very much for watching. Get subscribed, turn on notifications, or at least check out another video before you do. And remember guys, a share and a like is always appreciated, and I hope you have an amazing day.